Hi, welcome to another webinar where we talk about Pure Management Alliance. I'm Joseph Phillips, the founder of Pure Management Alliance, and tonight I have with me my friend and colleague, Robert Heen. Robert, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. I'm, glad to be here and looking forward to a chat.
Well, good. Well, Robert, a lot of people may not know who you are and the type of work you've done in the past. I know a lot of people know who you are, but let's just cover some basics here. Why don't you tell people about your background and the type of projects you've managed?
Certainly. So my name's Rob. Robert's very formal. But I started my career in information technology, and I was the person who would bring you your monitor, like IT help desk.
Mhm.
And that job lasted, I want to say 4 months before the director of IT at the shipyard I was at came to me and said, "Hey, Rob, we're doing this project to install a new enterprise resource planning system, an ERP, and I think you'll be good on this project." And I was like, that sounds a lot more interesting than installing monitors. Not that that isn't necessary work and I wasn't learning a lot, but it seemed a lot more varied. I'd get to work with different groups of people with finance or sales or, engineers. And that seemed interesting. And that was my first exposure to projects. And
Mhm.
I think back to that. And for me, it was a wild experience because I was brought on to be the project management module expert of this system. And my job would be to go talk to our project managers who had been in construction or shipbuilding for 20 or 30 years and show them how to use this amazing new software tool. And I knew nothing about the software tool and nothing about project management, at least formally.
Right.
So I would go to these people who have been in steel working for 30 years and tell them, "I'm so sorry, you can't use your paper requisition slips anymore for supplies." And you'd see this fear in their eyes. And so I
Right.
had to be that gap between these people who have always done it one way and help them, that change management, we call it in project management, help them find a new, better way.
Mhm.
And since then, I've been on all different types, mostly IT, information technology projects, but also human resources.
Right.
I like that area because of what it can do. We think of the tools we use on a day-to-day basis, and a lot of effort and energy is put into sales software to make sure people can sell, and a ton of effort and energy is put into tools to help engineers build better things, and everyone tends to forget about human resources and IT. It's
Mhm.
it's not exciting, it's not interesting, and for me that's kind of a shame because that people shouldn't struggle, they shouldn't fight with a system or a process. And so
Sure.
where I can get in and help with that, that to me is really rewarding because not only can I solve complex problems or bring people together, but I can help them do what they want to do better, more effectively, so they can go do good things that aren't fight with that computer system over there.
Right. It's interesting. One of the first projects I was on was for a large pharmaceutical company,
Mhm.
and they were moving from one operating system, well, Macintosh, to Windows. This was in the late '90s, maybe right around it was late '90s. But it kind of that same thing. And if you know a Mac person, they love the Macintosh. They love Apple.
Mhm.
At least in the late '90s on this project, and there was some. Oh, that was very challenging. A lot of because people were emotionally attached to the way that they've done work, and change is hard. So what did you do to help move those people along that were resistant to change?
Ooh, that is a great question, Joe. The this one individual in particular worked in procurement and was responsible for making sure there was enough plate steel. So we would have these big flat deck truck comes, a highway truck
Sure.
with just a flat deck on the back and just steel that was, 1 to 3 inches thick. He had to supply enough to build the ship or fix
Mhm.
the cruise ship or whatever. And when I first told him that was the fear in the eyes, and I said, "Here's the deal. I'll sit down with you right now and I'll walk you through it. I'll
Sure.
help you do a couple. Here's my work phone number. My work gave me a phone back then, so that was great. Here's
Yeah.
my email. I'm going to come by every couple of days and just check
Mhm.
in." But I tried to make that as easy as possible. Um, and he understood, it wasn't me deciding you can't do this.
Right.
He
Right.
knew that
Yeah.
the big boss, the CEO, decided.
Yeah.
But I really empathized with this person because again, this is for me, I could do this in my sleep, right? I know the process. I'm the expert on the module, or I became the expert on the module.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but for this guy, it's like taking his entire world and flipping it upside down and saying, "Figure it out."
Yep.
And since then, I've noticed a lot of implementations are like that. I've worked at places where they
Mhm.
deploy a new system and they turn off the old one, turn on the new one, but there's no enablement, there's no training. There's no
Right.
one internally who knows how to use it or why it should be used. And oh, people will figure it out. They're smart. Like, yes,
Sure.
they are
Yeah.
incredibly smart, but unless you know it, you don't know it. So
Yeah.
sitting with this person saying, show me what's confusing. Let me build you the guidebook. Let me help you out. Like, I'll back you up until you've got it. And
Yeah.
that was my approach with, with those kind of transitions, because this is their world. This is their job. And
Exactly. Yeah.
they feel like they won't have a job if they can't use a computer, which is crazy.
Right. Right. And see, there's a couple things there that you said I find interesting is one, the idea of empathy,
Mm,
that as project managers, so often, well, projects always bring about change, right? We're moving, adding, changing, or deleting, but all that really is a change in the organization, change in the environment.
mhm.
And change is an uneasy thing. You think about just in your personal life when you have a change. You move to a new house or a new city. I don't know if you have an experience with that.
Oh, yeah. Many, Joe. Yeah.
I know, I know. But you make a big change. There's a lot of anxiety attached to that. So I think sometimes as PMs, that we see it, right? But we're
Mhm.
not. Doesn't affect me really once this project is done because it's temporary. That's have that over the wall mentality, and so it's something that we have to be cognizant of a PM is to empathize and to see the change, or like you described, the fear in an
Yeah.
individual's eye.
Yeah. I've never seen, like, the way I describe it, I've never seen terror in someone's soul except that one guy telling me couldn't use paper forms, which
Yeah,
seems silly, but that was big.
right.
So,
Yeah. Well, I think even you even to in today's environment that you move from one piece of software to another, or
mhm.
every time you get up, it seems like in the morning, right? Your phone has had an update overnight. You're like, oh, what did they do now? What happened now?
Well,
And
my
it's just like this dread of,
for me with some systems, it's almost like a game, like spot the difference.
right. Yeah.
I'll realize, like, wait a minute, this button moved or this menu is new or whatever. It's
Oh,
like I'll find someone, hey, do you see this?
right. Well, with so much of our software as a service models, it's a website. It's so easy to make a change. And then I use a lot of online tools and I come
Mhm.
back to it 2 or 3 days later or 2 or 3 weeks later. Sometimes I'm like, what happened? Like I had my workflow down. Yeah. So it's just that it's a dread and a panic and fear. And yeah, nobody likes it. So I think that's an important thing that all of us need as PMs is to be able to empathize when change happens. And we're seeing a lot of change in the industry right now,
Yeah.
including our company with Pure Management Alliance. That we're trying to change the model of what is project management education. What does it mean to be a credentialed project manager with Pure? So let me ask you, why did you get involved with Pure?
It's a great question, Joe.
I'm
I think,
full of them.
yeah, that's good.
Full of
Um,
something.
I always think back to all of my experience learning project management, and it was either learned by doing. And on that
Hmm.
first project, I got lucky. They brought in a consultant who'd done project management, had their own company. So got to learn a lot from that person, by traveling up and down, sitting next to them. And then by, obviously making mistakes and kind of,
Right.
stepping on the rakes and getting hit in the face a couple times.
Yeah.
But it was either that or book learning. So
Yeah.
I would get a book and read about whether it's, and I've got some on the shelf here. Uh, Oddly, that director who pulled me onto the first project gave me some project management books, and I think one of your first ones was one of them. Like I
Oh,
looked
smart
at it,
guy.
yeah, I looked at it years later. I'm like, oh, I know this person.
Well, this guy. So he's the one that bought it. Okay, now we
Yep,
know. Yeah,
yeah,
mystery solved.
that one copy. I'll let them know.
That one guy. Yeah.
Um, so, and thinking back, I'm like, that works for me. Like that
Yeah.
happened to work
Yeah.
for Rob, and that's my approach to learning a new system. Like get hands on and tinker with it. That
Right.
doesn't work for everyone. Many
Right.
people, need more than just a standardized guide or not a one size fits all, but here is what we have decided it is. And
Right.
I speak to many people. How do I get into project management? I'm like, well, you
Mhm.
just got to go do it. But they don't. They're
Yeah.
missing the leg up, the steps that I had sitting next to someone and having
Right.
access to that. So when this opportunity came along, it's like, hey, I can take some of the things I've learned that I have found valuable and useful, and I see that I can apply directly in reality.
Yeah.
I want to pass that on. I want other people to have that, so they're better than me. Like,
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I know you and I have talked about that before. but I think that is a big thing, that one of our mission in Pure is our trainers, the people talking about this, aren't just talkers. We're all
Mhm.
doers. We're all involved consulting or leading projects, not just teaching full time. Maybe all of us consult on projects or run a business
Yeah.
centering on, in some way, project management. So we see the real world. We see how the bacon is made, if you will. So I think that's important in Pure, is this idea that we are almost mentoring to some extent, and getting away from, it's not a cookie cutter, it's not a recipe for project management, that there is no one universal size fits all. That's part of the concepts of Pure, right? That
Mhm.
we have to uh, be flexible but be realistic in this environment, that it's a realistic expectation, is Pure projects under realistic expectations. It's not just for the project, it's for the organization. But yeah, we need some realistic expectations and a realistic budget and timetable and so on, to be able to actually apply what's going to work here. And I say all the time, and I know you do as well, that what works in one scenario isn't guaranteed to work in another. That
Mm.
every situation's different.
Yeah, different people, different resources, different
Right.
context.
Yeah.
And that, that's interesting, Joe. Thinking back to I even remember that that first job I had with a shipyard used this system called IFS.
Okay.
Um, After I was there, I moved down to the Bay Area. You mentioned, moving around a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and the reason I moved here was to be with my then girlfriend. Yeah, and my first job was a traveling consultant. So the exact antithesis of what I chose to do.
Yeah.
But I ended up with this company implementing IFS. And I remember going in and thinking, okay, I've worked on the product management module and the documents module and the inventory module, but not with a company like this.
Hmm.
And it was a bit of that was my first experience after I learned project management and learned, that approach to things, where it's like, to your point, I need to change the approach. I can't apply directly what I learned in the first place. I
Right.
can use it as inspiration. I can use it as a starting point, and then I have to figure out how does it reshape to fit group number two.
Right. Exactly. It
Hmm.
was one of the things that I learned early on in my role as a PM, was you you have to learn where you're operating first. The environment where you operate first has a huge influence on decisions and how work gets done and how you get
Hmm.
resources, and the politics and some of that underbelly of project management that we don't always want to talk about. It's just how things operate. Just the culture of the organization is so important. So I worked in a startup environment, and there were like 10 people in that environment when I was consulting there. And then I worked at a huge, massive insurance company as a consultant for a few years. The opposite ends of the spectrum, very
Hmm.
rigid, very structured. Everybody spoke the same terminology, versus the other in the startup. It was kind of loosey goosey, eating a sandwich. It's like whatever you
Whatever you got, check it in there.
whatever you got. Yeah, let's get to work and get it done, whatever it takes. So it's the culture of the organization has a big effect too on how you manage that project.
Yeah, yeah. That's So I'm just thinking I've been in environments where once I determine what the culture is, it makes it harder to stick around.
Well, that's
Um,
true. It's one of the best parts of being a consultant, though, right? You-
you can pick and choose a little bit more. Yeah.
yeah, and it's kind of sad sometimes too. You hate to leave because you enjoy working there.
Hmm.
Uh, I was at a one of our other instructors, Jim Chambers. I met him through a huge project we were at a hospital network in the Midwest, and so Jim and I worked together on a big project.
Hmm.
And we got done a lot of stuff in this rollout and in the continuing ed piece of the organization. And it was kind of sad when the project was on, because it just went so well. I mean, not perfect, of course, but overwhelmingly well received, and made good relationships there. And it was a good experience. And so sometimes that's the other side of it. You're not going to employ, you're going to move on to something new and
Well, and
go from there.
yeah, a couple thoughts there, Joe. You mentioned not everything goes according to plan. Like
Yeah.
That's something too, depending on how you approach or learn project management, you're like, oh, I've got my plan and I've got my work breakdown structure. It'll be fine. Then, wham,
Way
something
in
comes
the
out of left
reality
field.
is what's the old quote? You make plans and God laughs.
Oh, hat. I
Yeah.
like no plan survives contact with the enemy.
Oh, yeah, that's true too. We'll get Russ Parker in on that. Let's see.
But that comment, and then also like meeting people, I still have. I met a woman at that first job who was the inventory management expert. I was the project management, I'll put it in quotes, expert. But I'm still friends with her. I know her family. When we were in Portland together, we hung out a lot. When they're here, we hang out. So it's more for me than even just the work and like taking pride in that accomplishment of deploying the thing or getting
Right.
through the risk or the hurdle. It's also these people you meet that years later you're just like, yeah, that person's a friend, and that was a great
Oh, yeah.
experience.
It's so true. I mean, Jim and I, we go fishing together, and at one point, we rode motorcycles together for a bit. I finally sold mine under duress, but
Ah.
but we did things together. We're still, we're friends beyond, just working together. And you make these relationships that you're both invested in. You both have that common experience, not only, as a consultant or a PM, but just, within the organization. So it is interesting how many connections you make in project management. That reputation follows you around based on how you performed and how you deal with people. So much of it's about relationship.
Yeah, and I think that, the longer I've been around in all my years, thinking about that and the relationships and the people, like what sticks out to me about jobs, sometimes it's the cool thing that we built, but really it's the
Mhm.
there's some people I've worked with on projects who I've never met in person, but I still call them
Sure.
friend and we still chat and we
Yeah.
text message each other, and that to
Right.
me has a much bigger impact than any of the books or any of that stuff.
Oh yeah, I totally get it. I'm that way with a few projects as well. Well,
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about Pure. I know you created 3 courses in our Pure program. So why don't you give us a little synopsis of those courses, and then we'll talk about each one a little bit.
Yeah, so we've got the first one I thought about was self-care for project managers.
Mhm.
And this one's big for me. I've had some jobs where it's stressful, I'll say,
Sure.
for
Yeah, of
various
course.
reasons.
Mhm.
And finding ways to still operate in the stress and to learn how to overcome or move through it. And this doesn't just apply to, our work. Our whole lives have things coming at us, unexpected things. How do we adjust and adapt? And when I think about it, it's like, I forget who told me this, but you can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And so for me, it's important that project managers know how to do that. How can you take time to rest and recover, to care for your body or your mental or emotional state, these kind of things.
I have
So
a I'm sorry. I have a quote that I carry with me, and that I tell people I work with, and I tell myself this: is you cannot pour from an empty vessel.
Mhm.
You have to take care of yourself before you can serve others. Just like on the airplane, you put your mask on, and then you're the children, God forbid, you're in that scenario. But you got to take care of yourself first. That's so important,
Yeah, so and that was the genesis of that course.
right?
Um, Next, I was thinking, okay, what are things about projects that I know I misunderstood when I started,
Sure.
or where do I feel like people maybe misapply some ideas? And that result was the postmortem and lessons learned chunk.
Mhm. Right.
Um, like I know when I was first learning project management by the book, when a project goes wrong, you do a postmortem to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
Um, no,
Yeah.
like in my mind, every project should have one. It could be me sitting for 5 minutes. How did it
Right.
go? Like
Yeah.
it's more like an after action report. Postmortem is a bit morbid.
Yeah.
Um, but we can learn from every project, regardless of good, bad, or
Absolutely.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Even the good ones, how can we do better? How do we amplify?
Right. Right.
And then what do we learn from projects? Again, lessons learned. It's only in the last closing step where you sit down and document what you learned. It's like, no, you can learn every step of the way.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I know I'm guilty of this. I frequently don't. I need to make time to sit down, and whether it's write it down on a bit of paper and look at it
Yeah.
once every 10 years or have it in, my computerized system so I can share it. How do we
Right.
learn from what we're doing and help others improve?
Yeah.
So that was one area where I was like, oh, I think a lot of folks could benefit from this thinking about projects.
So in my organization, it's relatively small. We have 5 employees, and at the end of an endeavor, a new course, or a writing project, or an endeavor like Pure, we at the end do a lessons learned, just kind of a debrief. But we always anticipate, how do we apply this next? What's next on the horizon for us? And so what can we take from here? What do we want more of? What do we want less of? What safeguards should we put in place to alleviate those risks that came into play? And that just helps us refine our process. But we always have that mindset of not just, okay, it's great, but how do I actually apply this in the next chunk of work, or what's on the horizon? So I think sometimes people get in the motion without the application of lessons learned. So I think your course is really good. You talk about that, and the intermittent learning. You don't have to wait to the end to learn and apply,
No.
like a sprint review or the retrospective in an agile environment. So I think that's
There's
important.
while you're saying that, I remember when I was a kid, I must have seen a book somewhere of some kid going to the library and having a big stack of books. I'm like, I'm going to do that. And I got a lot of books in the library. I don't think I read any of them, but I felt good about having the books. Um, to your point about like going through the motions, like, yeah, we did a lessons
Yeah,
learned. It's like, cool. What did you
yeah,
do with it?
yeah, exactly.
Like,
It's like, so how do you apply this in your next endeavors is so important.
yeah. Or like, I think a lot about how do you help another group?
Yeah, right. That's
Because our
true too.
Yeah, in our projects, like we always think about ours and mine, and especially when you're within one organization, there's other teams doing similar things somewhere.
Right.
Go
That's
help
very
them
true.
avoid the landmines.
Tell us about your third class, as we both get a little refreshment.
Yes. The third one I did was it's called Project Hacks, and this one I was thinking of again in my background. I've got the book on the shelf somewhere and buy the book, but like you can't fit everything about running a project in a book. There's just too much that could happen, that can happen.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and when I thought, there's another image. I forget the advertisement, but it's a mechanic working on an aircraft, and he like tightens a bolt and gets a face full of oil. And the whole thing was about having digital documentation. He can go and update it. But like, what are the little things that you just know through experience? Like, don't touch that bolt. You're gonna
Right.
get covered in oil.
Yeah.
What are
Exactly.
those? What are the project management versions of those that I can share with others?
Yeah.
And for some people, they'll watch that and go, yeah, obviously. For other people, they're going to go, oh, wait a minute, I can do it that way. So it was
Yeah.
just a different perspective on a lot of the things that I took as, to use the phrase gospel truth, that you can bend it a little, you can push it. A Harry Potter reference for any Harry Potter fans. This is the alchemy book that Snape wrote in, like, no, it's a quarter turn left, not a half turn. It's those handwritten notes in the margins that I was hoping
Sure.
to share.
Yeah. Well, I love that, because I like the idea of hacking your project. Remember, that was kind of a big thing, like how to hack your dinner, or how to
Yeah.
hack your swimming pool, or whatever it was. So I like that, how to hack your project, and some little things from there that are like, oh, that's a good idea. How can I take that
Mhm.
and, maybe twist and turn it a little bit to work where I am? And so I think that's
Yeah.
a good thing to take away from that.
Yeah, it's certainly not a, do it this way. It's, hey, Rob, have found it worked this way.
Right.
Please, riff on it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, I think that is those are 3 good courses for folks that are watching or not familiar with the Pure program. Just to give you some insight to that, so Pure means projects under realistic expectations, and we have a credential called the Pure Project Manager, and you earn that through puremanagementalliance.com. You complete the 60 hours of training, which are individual courses. And at the end of each course, you receive a certificate of completion and your PDUs. So you can earn PDUs as you go. So we have some agile concept there of some intermittent deliverables. Once you complete all of the training, then you can enter to the final exam, and you pass the final exam. You have 2 attempts as part of the program. You pass the final exam and you're considered a pure project manager, and you'll get a digital badge and certificate from credly.com. And it's backed up by the blockchain. You click it and people can see your verified experience. So that's the Pure program. And as Robert mentioned, he has 3 of the courses. And the courses are all relatively short. You could knock out, one a day if you were very ambitious, or 1 or 2 a week, and earn your PDUs if you are a PMI certificate holder. So that is what we're talking about with Pure. I kind of glossed over that for a moment. One of the reasons I think that people should enroll and start our Pure program is our mindset, our mantra is real world credentials for real world management. That it's just what Robert was talking about here, or Rob, that it's how to actually apply, how to do, that it's not a cookbook. It's these are taught by people that are actually in the field, and we want applicable, not aspirational, but applicable skills to project management.
Mm-hmm.
So, Robert, what would you add to that? What you think it would be good for people to come start the Pure program?
Well, put me on the spot, Joe.
I did.
I think it boils down to kind of what I was speaking to before, where in my personal experience, it's either go and learn, and I won't say fail spectacularly, but learn by doing, which can be painful and challenging and hard.
Sure.
Or you have the book learning approach, which is sterile in my mind. And it kind of has to be sterile because it has to be as broad as possible to apply to anyone.
Right.
However, if you're in construction management, that's much different than IT. That's much different than medical. That's much different than marketing.
Right.
And so when I look at Pure, it's going, okay, these are things from people who have done it, that know it works, that I can then shape and apply in my circumstance.
Exactly.
I don't have to mentally translate the sterility of it into reality. Maybe we should trade sterility into reality. I like that. Yeah, I don't have to spend a lot of mental time doing that because the instructors in the course has done that for me. Because it's in Pure, it's real in that sense.
Yeah, that is one of the classes that I teach in the program is on critical thinking that balances with emotional intelligence. We have courses on emotional intelligence, and I teach one on critical thinking, the ability to apply the logic and the math and the reasoning. And as most project managers that I meet are good critical thinkers, that they get the logic, they can see the big picture. So in that critical thinking course that we talk about learning from all of these other components of Pure, but you have to think through the logic of how to apply that where you are, back to that idea of the environment. And every environment, every project is different. So I think that's a big component that we all need as project managers, and we can always work on that critical thinking muscle a bit.
Sorry, I'm laughing at myself just thinking back to like grade school, and they're not teaching you English or math; they're teaching you critical thinking, huh? Now, so many years later, like, okay, I get it. I should have paid more attention, and now I'm paying for it now because I have to learn it again.
Oh, exactly. Believe me, I know that. I was a great like C+B student, because I was like, okay, I want to do the bare minimum and cut class as much as possible and get out of here.
I can confirm nor deny what I was, Joe. But
I know you were. Sorry, everybody, you're wearing the sweatshirt, man. Everybody knows. What is that? A snowboard behind you?
Oh,
or rollers?
I'll give you the quick story. Just out of frame, there is this skateboard.
Yeah.
Which cool. I don't know how to skateboard. If I tried this, I would fall off and get hurt, but it looks cool. My aunt had a family friend stay at her house, and after this person left, that skateboard was there. So my aunt said, Rob, do you want this? I'm like, it looks cool. So it hangs in the wall. This is just the deck of a skateboard, but I like the design. So it sits in the back.
Yeah. Well, I like owls. It's very cool. Well, we have, I didn't mean to make you take that off the wall there, but we'll see a course from Ben Chan, one of the other instructors, about creativity. And I think that is a big component in project management, as important as the critical thinking, being creative. And so sometimes I have these conversations with folks that project management's boring. It's not creative. It's like, it's not boring. You're doing it wrong.
Yeah, that's where
boring. Because you have to be creative to get to the business value.
Yeah, it's all right. It's boring. Like if the IT team is bored, that's good, right?
Right,
Yeah, because
right.
the operational team should be bored because everything's just chugging along.
Exactly. Right.
The that project team I was on for the shipyard had a location in Seattle and one in Portland. And we're up in Seattle, and we had 2 data centers that we just installed, one in Seattle, one in Portland, and we had a dedicated copper line between them.
Hmm.
And so we're talking to the engineer, and we said, we have to back up the software between Seattle and Portland. How long will it take? And he said, like 3 weeks, just, clicking and dragging. And so we're standing there, and I go, well, what if we put it all on a hard disk? And I drove it down to Portland in 3 hours and then drove back. And they're like, yeah, that'll work. So that night, they gave me a hard drive and a laptop and said, drive to the Portland location, get out, plug it in, enter this command, take a nap for 2 hours, and drive back. And that was one of the
Sure.
more exciting things I got to do just to
Yeah.
help make the project go.
I love that. It's almost like the low tech, high touch solution.
Yes.
You don't have to over engineer it.
The sneaker net, I think that's called.
Right. Yeah. SneakerNet. I remember those days with the 3.5-inch floppies and whatnot.
Oh, I've got I'm way off topic, but somewhere in my bookshelf I have a copy of SimCity on the big 5-inch floppies.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I had
good old days.
Jeopardy remember Jeopardy on the Commodore 64.
Wow.
Maybe I'm dating myself there.
No, not at all.
No, not at all. No, the gray in my beard does that. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Well, we are thrilled that Pure is live, and I'm thrilled that Robert is part of Pure Management Alliance. We have a great program. You should come check it out. There is a 1-hour overview. It's a free course that is an overview to Pure that will kind of set the framework. I have a framework of all of the components of Pure Project Management. It's free. You can come check it out, see if it might work for you or your organization. It's a 1 PDU, no obligation to buy anything, but it gives you a good insight, and there are some things that you can take from that and begin applying in your role as a project manager. And as we go into wrap this up, what I ask every person that we do these webinars for is, what's one piece of advice? Because we want people to have some applicable advice to take away from all of our training, all of our talks. What's one piece of advice, Robert, you would give to project managers that they could do today to make their life or their project better?
The knee jerk, Joe, is get hands-on and go do the work, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of the folks who say, hey, how do I get into project management, or how do I learn this skill? And there's projects all around us. If you watch some of my courses, my kid does an art project in kindergarten.
Right.
So finding those projects, and even on that big project I was on, I would volunteer, hey, can I lead just the documents module, a very small part of it? I want to do the whole thing. And even, recently in my life, I've said, hey, I want to go take that on. So getting hands-on and doing is the best way to, find your boundaries, to push them, to apply what you learn through something like Pure, and also to just be exposed to new things. So, get dirty, get hands-on, and you'll never know where you're going to go.
That's fantastic. I think that's so true. We have a webinar I did with the panel with about half of the instructors, and this was a question that came up. And that was a common answer was, you got to start somewhere. You got to get involved. And so I think that is words of wisdom, my friend. Very good.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen that panel, so I didn't steal anything.
Oh, well, no, it's just, we just recorded it last night. So you'll see it coming up. So check out Robert Heen. He's on LinkedIn, and he's in our group. You can find his LinkedIn connection through our site under the teams. If you want to reach out to Robert, I know he would love to hear from you, as would I. And we look forward to seeing you all in the course. And Robert, thank you for your time and being involved. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for the time to chat. And for everyone out there, hope to see you in a course soon.